Idiot.
Hello, strangers. I am
Hello,
Andy.
everyone. I can't hear Andy. I've got to do something.
Honestly, the nonsense we have to go through every time.
Page up, page down. Where's volume up? Here we go.
1 2 1 2. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I'm up at the maximum volume now.
Okay, you're. Oh, I give up.
Speaker. Here's something in the middle here. Here's speaker.
Yes.
Oh. Headphones too.
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's still very low volume.
Okay. Where are you now? Are you in your settings?
No, I'm on the this studio thing. We're recording. This is live.
This is awful. Right, if you go to your bottom right hand of your taskbar where the speaker is,
Yes.
open that up in settings.
And it's at maximum. It's at 100%. It's only you that's I can hear the noise. The chimes in my headphones are very loud.
So, what about now? Is that better?
I can hear you, but it's not very clear. It's not very loud.
Okay, let me turn myself up.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, that's better.
I don't want to go too loud because it can become distorted. But since I reinstalled Windows, and I've had to change a lot of settings.
Yeah, so it's your fault. It's nothing to do with me and my incompetence. It's you.
Well, I've got to be a bit careful about my settings because it could become unusable.
Right. Well, it would be unusable if I can't hear what you're bloody saying.
I don't know. You don't listen to me anyway, so
that's actually very true.
It doesn't really matter whether you're listening or not.
Oh, hang on. I don't. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. We're sorted. I don't like the. I'd like to be a bit higher. Ooh. Oh, there we go. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just organising my tabs here.
You're so much brighter on the screen than I am.
That's just natural sunlight coming in from the side.
Yeah, whereas I'm in a now curtained off room.
Yeah, you're at the back of the house as well, aren't you? You're away from the sun, basically.
With an IKEA desk lamp pointing right in my eyes.
Excellent. So, well, it's a good job we didn't record yesterday because the top story was that missing doctor.
Oh, Michael Mosley.
Yeah, and I had all sorts of theories that would have made me look ridiculous had I spouted them yesterday.
It's pretty sad, actually, because I used to follow him on social media. I watched all his programs, and, he was just a decent sort. I mean, we need more people like that, and unfortunately, obviously no one knows exactly what happened, but it looks like he just was overcome by the heat.
It's very weird.
It is. And pretty strange.
It wasn't helped that the mayor of the island admitted that for the first 48 hours they were looking in the wrong place.
Yeah, but it wasn't the mayor's fault. It was not until they saw the CCTV footage that pointed them in the other direction. Anyway, it's a sad story. He was a decent bloke, and so even if you lead a very healthy lifestyle, which he did, I know you're always saying it's a waste of time. And he was only 67, Michael Mosley, Dr. Michael Mosley. It's not much, he had a good another 20 years in him, hopefully. Anyway, so that was a bit sad. What else has happened? Oh, of course, the ridiculous Rishi Sunak D-Day nonsense.
I hate all politicians anyway, but...
Yeah, I know. That's so you mean you didn't vote?
No, I'm not allowed to vote.
Why aren't you allowed to vote?
Because I've lived in Sweden for 20 years.
No, you idiot. There were European elections in Sweden yesterday.
Why would I vote for anything European? I fucking hate Europe.
Yeah, but that's exactly the reason why you should vote. To vote in a party that limits the power of Europe if you're against it.
There's no such thing. They all pretend. No, they all pretend they're going to do this and do that, and they do nothing. They all do the same It's the same shit as the last party.
You're the most stupid person I've ever come across in terms of politics.
If
I hate the EU, so I'm not going to vote for a European election.
If voting ever changed anything, they would not let you do it.
Well, let me give you an example of how the whole world changed as a result of people's opinions on the EU. Nigel Farage. The downfall of the Conservative Party was on the basis of European elections.
No, the downfall of the Conservative Party was on the basis of their greedy ripping off the poor and feeding the rich policies.
Yes.
They've been in motion for the last X amount of years.
And Brexit facilitated that.
And thank God for that. Because without Brexit, we'd still be under the heel of these Tory fucking fascists.
The way your brain fails to operate, if it wasn't for Brexit, Boris Johnson wouldn't have got into power in the way he did.
But
the Tories got into power because of Brexit.
No, the Tories stayed in power because of Brexit.
Well, you're right, because they have been in for 14 years. Anyway, whatever. That was a major media storm with Rishi Sunak. I mean, I don't know what people expect. He's an idiot.
Yeah, I know.
He's not an idiot, but
he doesn't put one foot right.
No.
Ever.
No, but it's funny how even the right-wing media now they've had enough. And they're all going for, funnily enough, Reform Party. Nigel Farage appearing on Question Time again. Complete no mark. Do you know
I remember when Donald Trump was putting his hat in the ring for the presidency and you said, complete no mark, absolutely get nowhere.
Yeah. No, you're right. Absolutely. Well, we'll see if I'm wrong again. Because what the speculation is now is that there is actually a chance that Nigel Farage, after 7 attempts, might actually get voted in as an MP.
He actually will, and it's all thanks to that stupid OnlyFans hooker who threw a milkshake over him.
OnlyFans hooker? Now what are you talking about?
The girl who threw a milkshake over him.
Well, OnlyFans hooker, isn't that a bit slanderous? The poor girl. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but what are you talking about?
She threw a milkshake over him to promote her OnlyFans account, basically.
Oh, is that right? That's actual out there, is it?
Yes.
Well, good on her.
And now
using
she's in the papers saying, I spent 8 hours in a prison cell because of Nigel Farage. Well, no, you didn't, you stupid fuck. You spent 8 hours in a prison cell because you're a stupid fuck.
Anyway.
And she has basically garnered support for Nigel Farage off the back of her idiotic actions.
How much does she charge? What does she do on OnlyFans?
Do you think I really looked or cared?
Yes, I think you do.
I don't look at the competition. I only check my own OnlyFans, which is very reasonable.
Anyway, I was just about to say, before I was so rudely interrupted by salacious and possibly slanderous accusations, that the theory is that if Nigel Farage gets elected as an MP under Reform Party, he then actually resigns from Reform, joins the Tories and becomes the Tory leader. Can you imagine?
Even the Tories wouldn't think they had enough balls to pull that off. For fuck's sake.
It's beyond.
The country would certainly rise up if that sort of shenanigans went on. We don't vote out the Tories so we can have a new Tory party. That's not the way it works. That's not democracy, is it?
No. Anyway, so that's been mildly entertaining. You obviously didn't vote in the elections. There were some local issues as well that probably did affect you.
Look, the only thing that affects me is the price of housing around here. Nobody gives a fuck about it.
How do you know?
Because they don't. They're quite happy to sit back and watch people put prices up.
So,
And also, the commune are building new houses, but they are coming in at starting rents, which are the current prices, which is just fuck off. They think they're central London here for some reason.
yeah, but maybe if you actually read the manifesto of the local political parties, you'd find a party that wants to build reasonably. It must be an issue in your
I'm fucking
place.
61 years old. I haven't got time for these fuckers to build affordable housing.
Oh, you're
I'll
right.
be dead long before anything happens.
Oh, well, I'd say hopefully not, with sort of, what would you...
Well, you don't mean it.
No, that's exactly what I... Oh, Andy, of course I do.
You've got a space for my stuffed carcass on your wall of trophies. I know you have. Oh, this is Andy. I did a podcast with
Old
him
friends.
20 years ago. He looks good, doesn't he?
Oh, dear. So, in my quest for fitness and longevity, I'm proud to report that I tested this is going to be really exciting for the listeners. Do you know what an FTP is? Yes.
Fitness.
Functional. Threshold.
Threshold parameters.
Power. Functional threshold power.
Well, I got none out of 3 there. So.
No, you didn't. Anyway, I'm happy to report I measured my functional threshold power in the beginning of April. It's now the beginning of June, and I've managed to increase it by 10% as a result of all of the training I'm doing.
Wow. Let's see if I can remember.
Claps.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
No, that's the wrong
not
one.
that one.
Thank you. Well done. Yep. So that was quite... and finally, again, something that would be very interesting for all of the listeners, I finally did a good roast beef lunch yesterday. I've been really crap at judging the roast beef when I've done it. I don't do it that often, but there was a nice piece in the shop, so I bought it.
Do you do it by feels or do you use a meat thermometer?
Well, in fact, I can eat rare meat. I can eat, not blue, not like you, but I can eat rare meat. It doesn't bother me. But I'm conscious of other people wanting it sort of medium. So I do use a meat thermometer. I've got a good one. And they always say 56, 57 for rare. But if you do a piece of roast beef and you take it out of the oven at 56, 57, it keeps cooking. And so by the time you've actually come to carve it, it's... anyway, in summation, 53, 54 seems to be the ideal temperature to remove it. And the problem is, as we all know, it's those last few degrees that go so quickly.
Yeah, because it's exponential.
But anyway, it was a nice piece of beef and a few roasty potatoes and things. Very enjoyable.
Well, I had chicken nuggets and chips for my Sunday lunch.
Not from KYC. There's no KYC,
No,
KFC.
No,
What's it called?
KFC, but I cooked them myself.
What do you mean you cook nuggets yourself?
Well, I put them in the air fryer with my chips.
Oh, really? Why don't you do goujon of chicken? That's so much more...
When you're cooking for just yourself, you tend not to want to spend 3 hours in preparation.
Oh, isn't that strange? I still enjoy cooking for myself.
Yeah, but you've got a nice big airy kitchen where you can. Mine is a little cramped fucking space, which I hate trying to prepare. Making a cup of tea is a job.
Oh, is it? Do you have one of those sort of like draining boards that's got a couple of hot plates in it as well, or do you actually have a proper hob?
No, I have a proper hob, but it's a 50 centimetre, not a 60. So I've only got 3 hot plates.
Right.
And a smaller oven, which is in itself is really frustrating because I'm touching the sides every time I put anything in and out.
Oh, are you? All right. Yeah. No, you're right. Well, it's been downpouring here, so there's been no opportunity to do anything outdoors, that's for sure.
Ah. Well, it's been slightly damp here, but its sun's coming out now.
Are we allowed to talk about that newspaper article that I sent to you, or is that off?
Because it's going to mention the company's name, and I've tried to
Yep.
avoid that. So.
Good thinking. Good thinking.
But I mean, it was pretty generic.
Oh.
There was nothing specific.
Well, to change the subject completely, maybe you can tell the listeners what exciting things you're getting up to on your holiday.
Oh, well, I rebuilt my PC, which is very exciting.
What did you upgrade it at the same time?
Well, yeah, of course. That's why I rebuilt it.
So what does that mean? I know nothing about this bollocks, but what did you do?
New motherboard, new processor, new RAM, new solid state hard drives. So I've gone from I think 1.5 terabytes of storage to about 5. And the processor is basically one down from top of the range. So the speed of my computer is phenomenal now. And when it comes to video processing, all the rest of it, it's instantaneous. It's brilliant. And I will never have to upgrade it again because, like with the housing situation in Huelefte, I will be dead before they make any big changes.
It sounds like we've had a sudden rush of new Patreons that is that is financing this. What sounds like, it's just as a matter of interest. I know nothing. Are we talking 10,000 kroners worth or 20,000 kroners worth?
I was about 15.
All right, so that's about $1,500 or 1,200 sterling.
And my tax rebate was 26.
Why do you get a tax rebate?
Why wouldn't I? I get a tax rebate every year.
Oh, you do you?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So it's actually like a way of saving.
But yeah, because they always overcharge you. But I mean, most of that, my tax rebate was 7,000 something, but then I added the mileage that I've been traveling from my old house. And that bumped it up to 26. It was like,
all right, well, that's
18,000 or something.
That's a nice little bonus. So suddenly 2/3 of that goes in an instant on some random computer upgrade.
It's not random. This is what I do. It's hardly random.
Well, it took you long enough to work out what was wrong with my camera this morning.
I'm not in your house looking at your camera. How do I the first thing I would normally do is check to see if it's fucking plugged in.
Yeah, but
and I can't do that from here. You can, and you missed it. Anyway, it was I was very impressed with myself because last time I built a computer must be 10 years ago, and it's changed. We've got these M2 memories now that sort of slot in, and they're just basically like long strips of PCB. There's nothing to them. You can't even find where to put them on the motherboard because they've got heatsink covers on the motherboard where these things go. And unless you actually read the instructions, which I ended up having to do, and the cooling fan for the processor is a box. It looks like a birthday present. Whereas before the last one was just a little thing that sat on top.
Does it have a water-filled radiator for the cooling?
No, it's not water-cooled. It's called an Assassin. But it's got a quite a large fan in the middle, which you have to remove when you attach the actual fan to the processor.
All right.
It was with my eyes, it was a job. But
so how big is the same? Is it the same chassis?
Yeah, it's the chassis I had to buy when I upgraded the video card because it didn't fit in my old chassis.
All right.
So the oldest part of my computer now is 6 months old. It's basically brand spanking.
But isn't there a risk that there's going to be some new technology in 2 years' time that makes all of what you've just done redundant?
No. No, this computer can run anything, including NASA and their fake moon landings, for the next 10 years at least.
Did you see Elon's, what was the name of his rocket?
Look at my penis too.
It was, I think, the world's heaviest rocket. It weighed 500 tons.
It's probably because it was full of all his gold bullion that he's trying to smuggle out of his account before they come after him for X.
I mean, as you know, I don't really like these type of characters, and he's certainly a bit of a lunatic, but you've got to take your hat off to him just to have the vision to create such a impressive piece of machinery. I mean, obviously he's not doing it.
He's
it's his
got nothing
staff,
to do with it. He just throws money in a hole and other people get it done. It's not, he hasn't got vision. He hasn't got vision at all. If he had, he is literally the one person on earth who has lost more money than any other person ever lived.
But I mean,
that's not vision. That's complete and utter failure.
Where's he lost money other than Twitter?
Come on. And how many billions did he lose in Twitter?
20.
And who else in history has lost 20 billion pounds?
Oh, I see. Well, if you think of it in those terms.
He's lost more money than any other living human being or dead human being. Personal wealth-wise, he's fucked himself. He's down to his last 50 billion.
Not if the shareholders agree for his bonus of 56 billion.
Never going to happen.
Well, you say that. You sound as confident as I did for predicting Trump was not going to get into power.
Tesla don't make a profit.
Well, that's the ridiculous. It doesn't matter these days.
I know my company doesn't make a profit, and we seem to have endless pockets.
Oh,
it's unbelievable.
It's all for something that is going to happen down the road.
Which probably won't happen, because by the time it's ready to happen, technology has moved so far ahead, we have to retool for the next thing.
Oh.
It's a never-ending cycle of scam.
Anyway, it was exciting to watch this rocket going up into space.
Oh, it didn't blow up?
No. And,
that's unusual.
It looks so counterintuitive when you see these booster rockets landing back on Earth. I mean, how the hell can you get a bloody rocket to stay upright when it's coming down?
CGI.
You think it's all fake?
Why do you think none of these alleged astronauts ever appear on TV talking about their experiences?
What do you mean? I think no, it wasn't his rocket. It was someone else's rocket. They've just delivered a couple of astronauts to the space station. I didn't even know it was still going.
Space station.
And it's full of Russians.
Oh, are there any Ukrainians up there?
No, but I think the space station is still a Russian. What would you call it? Russian, American,
Soyuz,
whatever. So that's a bit weird. Yes, but I think that's. I can't think of anything else exciting. Well, nothing really exciting has happened in the world.
No. But actually, anything exciting? There was something else I was going to talk about, and I've completely forgotten it.
Well, I think you should start writing these things down.
Well, I had it all in my head until you came along with your technological nightmares and all the rest.
Well, it wasn't a nightmare. It was just it wasn't plugged in. You can't get much easier than that to resolve. It is a bit annoying that I've got to unplug everything to use my laptop.
Yeah, but, that was your choice.
Well, no, it was you that recommended it.
I said get a new computer for podcasting, just podcasting.
Well, that seems a bit extravagant. Though, in fact,
it would probably save us hours or days over the course of a year for you trying to solve your technical issues in front of every episode.
Having said that, I think I spent less than a third of what you spent on your upgrade on my whole computer.
Yeah. But you don't have to run the studio.
it had nothing to do with the studio and everything to do with your gaming nonsense. You admit it.
It does actually have ultra performance on every game on the planet.
Even when you use those goggle things.
VR is fantastic. I mean, it's as close to what they intended it as possible.
What games do you play with these goggles on? Tennis or something?
No, Elite Dangerous is my go-to VR game.
Elite Dangerous.
Yes, it's a space piracy game where you fly spaceships, and when you're sitting in the cockpit of your spaceship with the VR goggles, you can literally look around the cockpit and look behind you. You are sitting in it. It's brilliant.
And do you have a joystick in your hand and a throttle controller?
You know I have.
Not the old one.
Yes.
That World War II one.
The Thrustmaster. It's not World War II.
It is.
It's not.
It's literally themed on a Lancaster bomber controller.
No, it's not. It was the HOTAS.
I don't know what that is.
It's an American fighter jet.
Oh, was it?
Yes. They didn't use joysticks in World War II.
Of course they did.
They didn't. They had stupid steering wheels.
Well, no, they had a pole coming up in the middle. So do you have mates that you do this with? Do you go flying together? Do you have friends that you go flying with?
I have been flying with my brother and with Kate. She plays it too.
And are you part of a crib? What's it called?
A crib.
No, but what's that team of people that get together to play games?
You call it what you want. It's either a clan or
a guild.
A guild or whatever. No, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm a space pirate. I'm Black Balls is my name.
Black Balls or Black Ball?
Commander Black Balls.
What's the average age of the people who play this game? Is it 12 or 10?
Probably. No, Elite Dangerous is a bit of a grown-ups game. It's quite complicated. Quite complex.
It's difficult to fly, are they, Andy, these spaceships?
It's a massive game. There's so much to do. It's not just flying spaceships.
Is it a bigger world than World of Warcraft?
Much, much bigger.
Really?
There are literally 1 billion different galaxies with planets you can actually land on. It's a self-generating thing. You can.
What do you mean self-generating?
Every time you warp into a new system, it's unique. So it's system generated, and if someone joined your game, they come into your generated system.
All right. So how many hours can you spend with these goggles on? Do you get head sores and things?
I mean, not that long.
An hour?
Yeah, easily 2-3 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
And does that cut out the rest of the world? The real world I'm talking about. If someone knocks on your door, no answer.
No, they're not going to get in. You can't open the door in space.
What about the cats?
It's a bit like the Irish submariners who all drowned when someone rang the doorbell.
Stupid. Really? Sorry. So you can literally lose yourself?
Yes. Yeah, you can go and either do intergalactic trading, space fighting. You can fight the Thargoids, the aliens that are trying to take over the universe.
Thargoids?
Yes, they're dangerous.
And do they have spaceships?
They do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to fight them, would you, in space?
And what happens when your spaceship gets blown up?
My spaceship doesn't get blown up. You actually have spaceship insurance. And it has 12 risk. So if your ship does get destroyed, and my ships are really expensive, when your ship does get destroyed, it can cost you like between 30 and 150 million
tokens
to get your ship back. But I mean, my ships cost a lot. Because
You've got a fleet of them?
Yeah, I've got tons of them. I've even got a fleet carrier, which I can move across the universe.
Andy.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about my exciting life and my space adventures. You can always catch them on the OnlyFans account.
Sorry, what's the name of that game? I've got to check it out.
Elite Dangerous.
All right. So, we're not going to try and squeeze another episode out of the Loch Ness Monster, are we?
Fuck no. No, actually, we're gonna basically. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago in the car, and I'm just gonna wholesale steal it. Because it was really interesting and quite strange and quite moving as well, I found.
Dear.
And it was from a podcast called Case Files, narrated by an Australian chap whose name I don't know, unfortunately.
It sounds a bit murdery.
No, but there is death. It concerns September the 11th and the World Trade Center.
All right, well, that's a bit of a sensitive subject for me.
Because
we were talking to people.
So you knew some people who died.
Anyway.
Well, I don't know if you remember the story of a chap called Wells Crowther.
Who was he?
He was a young man. He was born in 1977. And he was the oldest of three kids. His parents, Jefferson and Allison, raised him and his sisters, Honor and Paige, in the New York City suburb of Nyack. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. And on his father's side, he was a grandson of a chap called Bosley Crowther, who was the critic or the film critic for the New York Times for nearly 30 years.
Okay.
Not really relevant, but quite interesting. As a kid, he used to watch his dad getting ready for church. And every day that they went to church, he would end up wrapping his comb in a small blue bandana, which he would then stick in his back pocket. And it was a bit of a trademark. And when he was 6, his dad gave him his own bandana, which was a red one, which he then started using himself to wrap his comb and put it in his pocket.
What is this, like some sort of gang insignia or something?
Yeah, like an upper middle class gang. It was just a thing, and it became his like lucky charm, and he carried that red bandana with him for the rest of his life, basically.
Do you carry a comb with you whenever you go out?
Yes, and a brush and some elastic hair bands. Moron. Yeah, I mean, even when he was playing sports at school, he would have that bandana on him somewhere. It was a bit of a lucky charm.
All right.
Now, when he was 16, he joined his father as a volunteer firefighter, becoming a junior member of the Empire Hook and Ladder Company, which is firefighting Cub Scouts, I guess.
Yeah.
He later attended Boston College, where he played lacrosse. And in 1999, he graduated with honours with a degree in economics, whereupon he moved to New York City, taking a job as an equities trader for Sandler O'Neill and Partners.
Don't know them. Do know what he did.
Yeah, settling into an office on the 104th floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
How many floors were there?
Not many more than that. I think it was.
No, I think that was pretty close to the top.
Maybe 120. Yeah.
Tell me his name again, just so I've got the picture in my head.
Wells Crowther.
Wells. It's an unusual. Well, it's not unusual for America. It's unusual for here.
Yeah. You've made me lose my spot.
Oh no.
He also entertained dreams of joining the fire department of New York, the FBI or the CIA. So
But he
it
ended
wasn't-
up being an equities trader instead.
Not instead. It was on the way. It was a stepping stone for him. It's not what he wanted to do, it's what he was doing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, not many people, what would you say, go from equity trading to being a fireman, I have to say.
I'm guessing that his family were quite well to do and money wasn't an issue. He wasn't working to acquire wealth or amass wealth. He was working towards his dreams and his ambitions.
Well, it was a natural progression from an economics degree. That's what you might think of doing.
Yeah, he was probably doing all this as a plan B.
Plan B.
Setting up his plan B. So anyway, fast forward to that fateful day, September 11, 2001. 9 minutes after the United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower between floors 77 and 85.
That was the first tower to be hit, wasn't it?
I believe it was. Wells called his mother from his office, and bear in mind he was above the strike. He called his mother from his office at 9:12, 8 minutes after the airplane hit, to tell her, "Mum, this is Wells. I wanted you to know that I'm okay." He then made his way. Now, luckily, I say luckily, the plane hit from a direction which left an emergency stairwell on the opposite side of the building mostly untouched. So he made his way down to the 78th floor sky lobby, where he encountered a group of survivors, including a quite badly burned Ling Young, who worked on the 86th floor in New York's Department of Taxation and Finance. And Young had been among a group of people waiting at a bank of elevators to evacuate when the plane hit the tower. So maybe it was the second tower to be hit, if they were already in the process of evacuation. And he was one of only 17 survivors from at or above the impacted floors of the towers.
Wells was?
No, Ling Young.
All right, yeah.
Now, Wells, at this point, because there was fire and smoke, had his red bandana covering the bottom half of his face so it could help him breathe. And he was also, by the time he got down to the 78th floor, he was carrying a young woman on his back who couldn't walk. And he directed the people waiting for the elevators to the stairwell on the other side of the building, which was open and working. And the survivors followed him 17 floors down, where he dropped off the woman he was carrying before he headed back upstairs to assist others.
Brave chap.
Indeed. By the time he returned to the 78th floor, the smoke and the haze was very, very thick. He found another group of survivors, which included AON Corp employee Judy Wine, who worked on the 103rd floor, and she was in pain from a broken arm, cracked ribs, and a punctured lung. And according to Wayne, Crowther assisted in putting out fires and administering first aid. He then announced to that group, "Everyone who can stand now, and if you can help others, do so." And he directed this group downstairs as well. As occupants of the tower headed for the street, Crowther returned up the stairs to help others. He was last seen doing so with members of the Fire Department of New York before the South Tower collapsed at 9:59.
Is that what it was? It was literally 50 odd minutes.
Yeah, it was within the hour. Now, his body was found in March 2002 alongside several firefighters and emergency workers who were bunched in a suspected command post in the South Tower lobby. The New York Medical Examiner's Office said his body was found intact, with no signs of burns, and authorities speculated that he was aiding the rescue effort as a civilian usher when the building collapsed. His family were unaware of the details of his activities between his last phone call to his mother and his death until Alison Crowther read Julie Wine's first-hand account in the New York Times of being saved by a man in a red bandana, which led to Alison meeting the people that he'd saved, including Wine and Young, and they confirmed from photographs the identity of the man who aided them. A mostly completed New York City firefighter application form was also discovered in his house after his death. According to survivor accounts, Crowther saved as many as 18 people following the attacks. So he was a real true blue hero.
And has he been honoured in some way?
Well, his parents, with the support of the Michigan Foundation, created the Red Bandana Project, a character development program for classrooms, sports teams, camps, and youth programs. And they also established the Wells Crowther Charitable Trust, from which they fund charitable work. There is a Wells Crowther Red Bandana Run, a 5-kilometre road race, which is held every October at Boston College. And in 2008, he was posthumously named an honorary New York City firefighter by Commissioner Nicholas Scoppetta. The same year, his Boston College lacrosse teammate, Tyler Jewell, wore a red bandana in honor of Crowther when he competed as a member of the United States snowboarding team in the 2006 Winter Olympics.
Seems to have had an impact on a lot of people.
Well, he
Wells.
was so young, and he was just starting out really, and he was so selfless. What he did was above and beyond.
Indeed.
A lot of people were probably trampling over other people in their rush to get out. And, I can't blame anyone for whatever their reaction was to that sort of thing. You don't know how you're going to react until it happens.
No, you're right. You don't, actually.
Every year since 2014, Boston College has chosen one home football game to serve as the Red Bandana game, with special red bandana themed uniforms. And on the National 9/11 Memorial, Crowther is memorialized at the South Pool on a panel. President Barack Obama, during his May 15th dedication of the museum, said of Crowther, they didn't know his name, they didn't know where he came from, but they knew their lives had been saved by the man in the red bandana. He called for fire extinguishers to fight back the flames. He tended to the wounded. He led those survivors down the stairs and carried a woman on his shoulders down 17 flights. And then he went back, then back down again, bringing more wounded to safety, until that moment when the tower fell. And one of his bandanas is on display at the museum, memorializing 9/11.
Did they ever actually establish what caused the towers to collapse? Was it just the construction method or something?
They were basically collapse proof. They were earthquake proof. That's a subject for another episode, really.
It was pretty it was pretty shocking, obviously, and amazing to see those structures just literally poof
in their own footprint.
Yeah.
Like almost like they were demolished.
Yeah.
Now, he was the subject of a 2017 documentary called The Man in the Red Bandana, and that was narrated by Gwyneth Paltrow.
All right.
The Premier Lacrosse League honours him through the Wells Crowther Humanitarian Award, and that award is given to a player in the league who has made a meaningful impact in their community. So, yeah, he's left behind quite a legacy for such a young guy.
Did you say he was born in 1977?
Yeah.
So 2001, he was only 24 years old.
Yeah, he was basically just
starting.
First year of graduation, after graduation, starting to work. So, yeah. Amazing chap.
Indeed. We should do more of those hero type stories. They're so much more uplifting than your normal subject matter.
Well, now we're going to talk about one of the women who was involved
in rescuing people
or being rescued. And this is a woman. I mean, on the morning of September the 11th, the lives of nearly 3,000 people was lost, and there were several survivor stories, but the survivor stories came about much later because for the first couple of weeks, everyone was in basic shock about what had happened and the aftermath and the repercussions. But there was a chap called Jerry Bozaks who did survive, and he started a support group for survivors in order to help himself grapple with his grief. And he came into contact with a woman called Tania Head, who had also developed an online support group for survivors. And he arranged a meeting with Tania Head, and they met over email, eventually merging their groups after many months of correspondence so they could reach a larger pool of survivors to offer help and support.
Mm.
Now, Head's story of tragedy and triumph stood out to other members, and she became widely known for her story of survival. She was inside the South Tower on the 78th floor when United Airlines Flight 175 plunged into it. Crawling through the smoke and the flames caused her to pass out. She woke up, she says, feeling like something was hurting her back. She could just feel this constant knocking on her back. And she was like, it hurt like hell. And she was saying, stop, whatever. And she turned around, she realized it was a man wearing a red bandana who was putting out flames because her clothes were on fire. And he was putting out flames. She looked down, one of her arms was badly burned and seemed to be hanging on by just a tendon. And she says that Wells Crowther, who she now knows his name, basically helped her head towards the fire escape and got her almost all the way there before they came across another guy who was almost dead. And the guy asked Tania to give his wife his wedding ring, and he handed over his wedding ring before dying very shortly afterwards, and she said she would do her best to return it. And in an extract from a message she wrote to the Survivors Network, she said, I looked around and it was like a horror movie. People were mounted on top of each other. The smell of burned skin and people's insides was gagging. I kept thinking about my fiancé and about our wedding. I wanted to wear that white dress and swear my love for him. Now, she worked in the South Tower. Her fiancé, Dave, worked in the North Tower. And he did not.
Did you say that it was it 3,000 people? I thought it was 1,500 people that died in the towers.
No, it was very close to 3,000. I remember.
Was it really?
When it happened.
And of course, all the subsequent health issues that so many of the, firefighters and everything have had to deal with.
Yeah.
And the survivors.
Stress. Well,
no, I was thinking of all of the physical health issues that have. For
it's smoke inhalation, dust, all the
and
rest of it,
asbestos, and all sorts of stuff that. So she survived, and the fiancé didn't, unfortunately.
Now the thing is, her story became very well known because it was in tandem with the man in the red bandana. And her story started where they met as they were both leaving work at the same time from separate towers. And she hailed a taxi, and she said as she opened the taxi door, a man jumped in the taxi from the other side at exactly the same time and said, "Oh, sorry, it's your taxi. Of course you can have it if I can get your phone number and take you out for lunch."
What?
So anyway, she was a bit offended by his
Forwardness?
and she refused, but he let her have the taxi anyway. And then at a function in one of the lobbies of one of the buildings, she bumped into him a couple of months later, and he said, "I should have kept that taxi. You never phoned me." And she sort of, they started talking, went for a quick coffee, and that went on for like 3 hours. And it was the beginning of a massive romance.
That was Dave.
That was Dave. She at this stage was about 4 years older than him. So, she had her own career. She came from a wealthy family. He also came from money, so they had plenty of resources. And eventually they decided to live together. They rented they bought a massive apartment in the city, and they also had a little retreat in the Hamptons. Bought a little golden Labrador called Elvis, and had this sort of fairy tale romance. But it had its ups and downs as well. They did tend to argue, and they would argue quite badly, and they were always sort of on the verge of breaking up. But then Dave would do something amazing, like for instance, they were planning the wedding, and she was getting all stressed out about it. So one day he turned up with a pair of tickets to Hawaii, and they flew out there to get away from everything. And when they arrived, she found that the whole wedding had been arranged by Dave. The dress and everything was all waiting, and they got married on the beach in Hawaii. But they were still going to go ahead with the planned big family wedding that she was so stressed out about. He just wanted to get it out of the way and take the pressure off her. So there was that.
I wonder if she carried on working in the city, in the finance.
Well, she was working for Merrill Lynch. She studied at Harvard and Stanford. But after the incidents, she got involved with a support network for the survivors, and she would create agendas for meetings, prepare reading materials, and she would even pay out of her own pocket for specialized trauma experts to speak to the group. That she also donated to the group out of her own pocket. So she was very, very generous and very selfless. It was because of her that the group secured official status and state funding. She was interviewed by the media about surviving the attacks, but she was very reticent to talk about it. She often would refuse. She would only talk within the confines of the support group. She didn't want the attention from the outside world. She didn't like the spotlight being on her. And she was always very humble about what had happened. And she always listened to other people's stories, even though hers was the one that everyone wanted to hear because of the man in the red bandana and because of her love story, because she was the only survivor who also had a family member who was a victim in the whole thing.
What is it's interesting when you talk in terms of she wasn't happy talking about the actual events of the day, as it were. I was talking just over lunch yesterday about what it must have been like for our parents. Your parents were a similar age to my parents.
Yes.
What they experienced during World War II, living in London. And
my mum was evacuated to Colchester.
So she was a little bit younger then.
Yeah, she was. I think my dad was born in 29,
Oh, that was the same as my dad.
and my mum was
27.
No, my mum was a little bit younger. I think she was 10 years younger than my dad.
All right. No, because just think of something like 9/11 happening on an almost daily basis.
Yeah.
I was relating that Mum didn't talk much about her war experience, but she said the one thing that the most frightening thing were the V2 rockets.
Yeah,
Do you remember the V2 rockets with the ramjet engines, and they would just run out of fuel?
You were safe as long as you could hear the engine.
Exactly, and as soon as the engine stopped, you knew that it was going to. What were the shelters they used? Not Amesley shelters. Anderson shelters. I was trying to think of the name yesterday. Very effective, extremely simple to. I mean, Mum had one in her garden in Kenton because, in fact, Mum lived in Kenton, and one of the V2 rockets came down in the area and just destroyed the street. I mean, the whole street just disappeared. So just imagine what brought up the thought in my mind was just imagine you really wouldn't want to talk about going through years of that sort of experience, bearing in mind this girl, obviously terribly traumatic, but didn't want to speak about it after just one experience. It's amazing that our parents' generation were sort of as normal as they were. Not saying they were completely normal, but you know.
Well, she was involved with the support network for years, was Tania.
Yes.
During those years, I mean, I think it was at the 6th-year anniversary that the parents of Wells Crowther were invited along because they wanted to honour him as well, and they asked to meet her, and she at first didn't want to, and people were a bit surprised. But then again, you know, the survival thing is a personal experience. She maybe didn't want to talk, but she agreed in the end to meet the parents of Wells, and they greeted her like an old family friend and put her at her ease, and within a few minutes she was talking to them about her experiences of that day and her experiences with their son, and they stayed in contact for a while. But as her story became more well known, people started to notice some inconsistencies.
Oh no, you're not going to. There's not a dark side to all of this, is there?
This is Strange Stuff podcast.
Oh God.
One person thought that her withered arm, which was reattached, didn't look as though it had been burned, but they never raised any concerns over fears of looking a bit rude. Others also wondered why Tania never brought any friends to the group. And things changed altogether in 2006 when a New York Times journalist, David Dunlap, and a chap called Sergei Kovalevsky raised their suspicions about her story after having previously spoken to every person who managed to survive the terror attacks above the level of impact. Now, a deeper look into her background discovered that her name wasn't even Tania Head. She was a Spanish national, and her real name was Alicia. And the details about her fiancé Dave were also completely fake. She wasn't even in America when 9/11 took place. And after they did their due diligence, they discovered Merrill Lynch had never had an employee named Alicia Head. Harvard and Stanford had never had any students named Alicia Head. And her whole existence and story was completely fabricated.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't the red bandana man that was completely fake, and just this Alicia girl. What was her name? Her real name?
Alicia was her real name.
All right.
Tania was the fake name.
Oh, Tanya was the fake name. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, when 9/11 happened, she was in Spain at business school.
Actually, in Spain, as opposed to South America.
She was in Barcelona.
Oh, so she was Spanish, not Hispanic.
No, she was Spanish. She did come from a wealthy background. Her father and her brother were, however, charged with financial fraud and put in prison. And she left to get away from the shame of that and decided that she would build her own. And she did go to New York to do this. She decided she was going to build her own business empire and try and win back some of the prestige that she had before her family were.
And she decided to do that by concocting a complete nonsense story about her being a survivor of the 9/11 attacks.
It's an amazingly, I mean, considering that she carried out this subterfuge for years without being discovered, and was, I mean, at one point they asked her to become like a tour guide of the 9/11 site, where she would walk visitors, and not rubberneckers, but she walked around with the current mayor, the ex-mayor Rudy Giuliani, and some governor of New York, and told them of her experiences, and they were all moved to tears by this woman. And anyway, once she was
exposed,
and she was exposed basically because she'd also been in contact with a documentary maker for a couple of years, a guy called Angelo Giuliano, and he had spoken to her when the news of the lies broke, and she'd arranged for this documentary to be made about the Survivors Network. But obviously the plans for the film were changed once her true identity was revealed. And once she was exposed, she declined all interviews and left New York, reportedly returning to Spain.
What is that? I suppose if you make financial gain out of it, that's sort of like fraud. But in fact, is it?
No, because she didn't make any money. In fact, she paid for support. And even today, there are still members of the network support group who appreciate what she actually did, as well as those who hate her for what she actually did.
Mm.
It's this is why I've decided to do it as an episode, because it's a very fucking strange thing to do. I mean, it's an obvious cry for attention.
I was going to say it is attention seeking, but
it's the worst kind of attention seeking. I mean, imagine the parents of Wells Crowther hugging her on stage and claiming that she's one of their family now, and finding out that she just made the whole fucking thing up.
And how old is this woman now, do you think? She must be in her 60s. No,
she would be in 50s.
50s now.
I'll see if I can.
Oh.
I'll see if I can find her age. I've got so many different tabs open for her. She was born in 73. So
right.
51.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's... I was just about to say, let's hope she got her just deserves, but...
She was never actually prosecuted for anything. She was spotted back in New York by the documentary maker a couple of times. And the first time he saw her, he just tapped her on the shoulder and said, Tania. And she sort of basically screamed at him and ran away from him. And then he saw her again. He followed her for a while. She was with her mother. And he filmed her surreptitiously to see where she was going. And apparently they went to this small boutique hotel. And he waited outside for a couple of hours. And she came out on her own, dressed to go to a party, he says. And he followed her for a bit. And then he sort of lost his temper. He thought, this is disgraceful. Like, she's swanning about town like nothing's happened. So he confronted her. And he said, don't you feel in the least bit ashamed, or where is your compassion? Where is your empathy? And anyway, she threatened to call the police, so he stopped filming and walked away. And he felt a bit, not guilty afterwards, but he felt sad for her. And he felt sad for the whole situation, because so much good came from so much bad, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a tough one. It is a tough one. Because as I say, she paid out of her own pocket to help people. And she did genuinely help people. But the whole thing was just a complete sham.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there weren't too many more stories like that after the 9/11 situation. Tragedy.
They did actually finish making the documentary. It was called The Woman Who Wasn't There.
And can you see that on Netflix or something?
I would imagine you can find it somewhere. Let me see if I can find a link to it.
The Woman Who Wasn't There.
No, you'd have to check it out.
I'm sure I can find it.
Yeah, so anyway, that brings us to the end of this little sad and strange story of a survivor of 9/11 who interwove her story so well and so professionally with other people's stories, but nobody knew, nobody questioned it for 6 years.
Well, it's sort of a bit beyond belief that someone would pretend something like that.
You can't even imagine that someone would make that up.
No. Obviously someone did.
But I mean, at least we started with the good story of Wells Crowther.
Yes. The man in the red bandana.
A true hero. A true
hero. Yeah. Yeah, well, that was a different one, Andy, I have to say.
Well, I thought you'd find it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does sort of pay to have these kind of stories aired. And as I say, it affected me while I was driving in my car. And I thought it would be a story to share.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Thank you, Case Files, for giving me the inspiration for this week's episode.
Well done. Yeah.
And thank you for listening.
Oh, that's it, is it? Oh, God, look at the time.
Yeah, we're early. What do you mean?
No, it's an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know, because it was quite a story to tell.
Oh.
It could go on for a lot longer. I think the episode I listened to was nearly 2 hours.
All right.
A lot more detail, but you know, we're Strange Stuff podcast. We don't do deep diving. We lightly muff.
I was going to say we're light. Strange Stuff podcast light.
Yes.
Oh. Anyway, well done.
It's like a deep dive without the calories. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Yes.
Hope you found this interesting. Don't forget, follow us on our socials. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and all the other places.
Twitter, X.
No, we don't do X because
we don't do X.
Yeah.
All right. Because of Elon.
By the way, I did release a free episode of Patreon as well, which you can go and watch or listen to at patreon.com/strange stuff podcast.
Yes.
And you can, if you enjoy it, you can buy us a beer or buy us a coffee and listen to a lot more, because there's plenty out there now. And we'll speak to you again the same time next week. In the meantime, have yourselves a strange week. And if you do happen to see a disaster caused by a terrorist attack or even a natural disaster, don't pretend you were there. Even if you want to help, just help. In the meantime,
well said.
We'll see you next week.
What's that? What's that finger pointing thing?
I'm on camera now, so I'm talking to my.
You don't know anything, do you? You idiot.
So, freeze frame.
Cut. Isn't it cut?